What is going on, everybody? My name is Chris. Welcome to Bourbinsane. Today we're going to be reviewing Four Roses Small Batch Bourbon. Four Roses makes several different types of bourbon. Their main product being Four Roses Yellow Label, which you probably see in every liquor store you go into. They also make this small batch product. They also make a Four Roses single barrel, which obviously is just a single barrel of bourbon that they picked and bottled up. Each bottle is going to be a little bit different based on that. And then they also make some higher end bourbons as well, some of the most sought after bourbons in the world actually. Things like your Al Young, that's one of the main Four Roses products that are very high end, very difficult to find, and if you can find one, supposedly they're supposed to be really good. But Four Roses are doing a lot of unique things with their bourbon, trying out different combinations, see what goes well together, what doesn't. It's a very interesting, very progressive distillery. They have several different types of formulations and several different mash bills they use to make their bourbons. Four Roses uses two main mash bills, or two different makeups of their bourbon. So the first mash bill is called Mash Bill E, and it's a 75% corn, 20% rye mash bill. The other mash bill is Mash Bill B, and they use a 60% corn and 35% rye mash bill. So 35% rye, that's quite a bit higher on the rye, so you can expect more of those spicy notes than a standard higher corn mash bill. Another interesting thing about Four Roses is they use 5 different yeast strains to kind of get their bourbon going and used in the formulations for their bourbon. So the 5 different yeast strains they have are yeast strain V, which they describe as more of a delicate fruit flavor. And they also have yeast strain K, which is slightly spicier yeast strain they use to make the bourbon. And then they also have O, which is a rich fruit flavor. And then also Q, which is they describe as a floral flavor. And then finally they have yeast strain F, which is more herbal notes you're going to get. So they use all these types of different yeast strains together. Sometimes they mix them, sometimes they'll do them individually. So it's really cool. It gives each one of their bourbons a little different flavor, a unique flavor. Four Roses small batch bourbon is actually a combination of multiple yeast strains and different mash bills, some E, some B, to make up the small batch formulation of their bourbon. So I'll go ahead and put on the screen here what specific strains they use, and if you guys want to go into this more, you could probably do a whole video just on the different types of yeast strains they use and flavors you would pick up based on what type of bourbon you have that has those yeast strains and the specific mash bill makeup. Alright, let's go into the color. So looking at the color on this one, it's very light. As I mentioned, it's a 90 proof bourbon, but the color on this looks very light, and even in the bottle, if you can see, it's a very light color. I would describe this as even a light caramel. I don't know if, like I mentioned, it has something to do with the yeast strains they use based on what's in the bourbon that makes it lighter. I'm not sure on the age on this one. I can look into it and put that on there for you too, but overall the color is quite light, and we'll see if that translates into the taste or not. Alright, so let's go into the nose on this one. I do get oak, a little bit of oak on the nose here. A very sweet smelling nose though too. I really wouldn't describe the smell as a rye-like smell. I know both of these mash bills are actually quite high in rye, but it's got a nice sweetness, a nice light floral nose almost. It's a very nice nose. Let's go on and give it a taste, guys. Cheers. Actually got a pretty good sting in the nostrils there on the first sip, which I wasn't expecting at 90 proof, but overall still quite smooth. Like I mentioned, I did get a little burn going down. The finish is still there, so a pretty lingering finish really. And I think more that spice came through on the taste. So maybe some of that rye that is in the mash bill with this bourbon did come through on the taste. But it's a very good taste. You get all the caramels, the vanillas. It's still very light. Almost like a citrusy type fruit in it. Second sip goes down much smoother. Don't get the burn near as much as I did with the first one. I didn't have any bourbon before this at all, so I think being my first dram of the day, maybe I had to acclimate my tongue to the taste I'm getting from this. I do get more of the rye flavor coming through. I mean, it is a little spicier both with the first sip and the second sip. I think surprisingly it left me that burn going down that I wasn't expecting. From a bourbon this proof, I definitely wasn't expecting that. But overall, it's got great flavor, a little bit of spice, pretty lingering finish. Overall, this is a great bottle of bourbon. I think I paid $35 for this bottle. Depending on the time of year, I've seen this very readily available, and I haven't seen it at all other times of year. I'd say in general, you're going to be able to find a bottle of this. Surprisingly, I've never bought the single barrel Four Roses before. I've only had the small batch, and I've had the yellow label. I don't recall the yellow label being anything too special. Single barrel, I've heard mixed reviews. I've talked to a couple people who really liked the single barrel, and other people who didn't really care for it at all. But in general, it's regarded as quite a good bourbon. So the small batch, though, for the value, about $35, it's a very good bourbon. Something that you can sip every day. It's very light, very easy to drink. If you do prefer a higher rye bourbon in general, this is going to be a good option for you too, because you do get some of those spicy notes we talked about. It leaves that feeling in your mouth and a little longer finish in your mouth. Maybe if you guys are at a bar, go ahead and order a pour of it, see if it's something you'd like to stock yourself at home. I really like this bourbon. As you can see, the bottle's almost empty. It's something you can easily go back to all the time, and something I thoroughly enjoy. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Stay insane. Thanks for watching the video today, guys. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit that like button and that subscribe button. Also follow me on Instagram at Bourbinsane and Facebook Bourbinsane.